Ladies and gentlemen, get ready to embark on a journey like no other. Welcome to the Glum Lot Podcast,
your go-to destination for a unique blend of recovery and discovery.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Mark. And in this podcast, we will endeavor to create a safe and uplifting space for our guests and listeners to share their stories with sincerity and a touch of humor.
Remember, we are not a Glum Lot. The Glum Lot Podcast is more than just a source of entertainment. It's a beacon of hope, proving that even in the darkest moments, recovery is possible. Every story we share carries the power to inspire positive change.
So buckle up, get ready to listen, and join us in discovering the strength that lies within every individual's journey. This is the Glum Lot Podcast, where humor meets hope. All right, so today's episode, we're doing something a little bit different. We've got Matt here and Brett and I, and we're going to be talking about the podcast up to this point with 50 plus episodes and a few months under our belt and almost 7,000 downloads from 25 countries.
Very meta.
Just what we've heard
about a podcast.
Yeah, it's a podcast about a podcast. So we welcome that. So Matt's going to kind of try to lead the conversation. And Matt, go.
Welcome back to the Glum Lot Podcast.
Holy shit!
There's my best Mark impression.
Okay.
Just as a reminder to the listeners out there, make sure you check us out on Facebook at the Glum Lot Podcast. All right, yeah. So obviously this is a little bit different format, but I thought it would be interesting to hop on here and get with you guys and just kind of do a check-in.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So I think, obviously we hear from you guys a lot, but we don't hear, we don't really hear much from your side of the story.
You're getting into dangerous territory,
exactly. So I guess we'll start with, why did you guys start the podcast?
Well, I'll tell my side, then Brett can tell his side. My side is that I was looking for a good sobriety podcast. And I went on, I think first I went on Spotify, then I went on Apple Podcasts, and I just searched.
Yeah.
And I came up with a few, and I listened to one that sounded promising from the description, and it was pretty bad. It was a guy just talking basically himself, and he thought he was funny.
Oh,
he wasn't.
Exactly.
And he just wouldn't stop. He just went on and on, and
it goes.
Yeah, he was talking about himself. Then he had on a guest, and it was awful. So I turned that off. Then I turned on the most popular one was Sobercast.
Yeah.
Which is well put together. The thing I didn't like about it was really what it is. It's not really a podcast. It's just a playing of a speaker tape.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some of them are really good. Some of the quality of the recordings is not that great, but
mostly because they're from 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to hear speaker tapes, that is the place to go.
Absolutely.
And also for me, my favorite podcast to listen to is called Smartless. Mm-hmm. And it's a very popular podcast with Sean Hayes, Jason Bateman, and Will Arnett, where there's three guys, and they kind of get on there and bullshit with each other. They all are friends. And then they have on a guest. And I was like, that's kind of a cool format. And they, it's not a speaker thing. So basically the guest comes on and they talk to them about their journey through whatever if they're a sports guy or an actor or whatever they're doing. I thought that'd be kind of a cool format for sobriety. At the same time, Brett's wife would listen to me and Brett goof on each other, and she said, "You guys should start a podcast." And I thought, no shit, I've been thinking about that. And I talked to Brett about it, and it didn't start it. But let Brett tell his story.
Yeah, we got way different stories here, but that's okay.
I may have never even heard your story. I don't know.
Do you think it's easier for Jason Bateman and Will Arnett to get guests?
God, yes. Are you kidding me? They get amazing guests on that show.
It must be nice when every friend you have is famous.
Exactly. Yeah,
we're getting there.
But you know what? It's nice when every friend you have is sober.
That's right.
True. That's true.
That's true. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as far as everything Mark talked about, yeah, I definitely believe it. Right, because I too had found those things out, but I didn't find those things out until after this whole thing started. Originally, it all started when I got to go to my stepson's baseball game, and there's a situation there, and it really had me all uptight. And I showed up, and I told this in my story, and Mark was there. And all of my worries and anger and everything went away, and we just commenced to being idiots. And so we could not stop being idiots. And I was laying in bed with my wife one night, and I said to her, I wonder, because I have done some altruistic things in the past with social media and loved it. But ever since I got sober and when I was drinking heavily, I did not do a thing that way. And so I was thinking, man, the two of us have the gift of gab. I would love to do something with Mark. And that's when I whipped out the phone and I texted Mark and said, hey, you want to do a podcast? And he was like, you're kidding me. I was thinking the same exact thing. And then it just all went off. So we've got two little different stories, but that's okay. It doesn't matter because here we are. And
here we are. Episode, what is this? 50?
6, 7,
56,
50
something like
How
that.
about we just say 50 something?
Yeah, 50 something.
Well, there's a little peek behind the curtain. So this episode might not even see the light of day, right? We are testing out some new software because as the podcast expands, we are trying to get a wider range of guests in. And in order to do that, we have to be able to do it remotely, right? So
That's
this
right.
is our first crack on using this new remote software.
We talk a lot about crack in this thing.
We do. We have had a decent amount of crack conversation.
Yeah, well, there's a decent amount of crack in the world.
Yeah.
But so if you're wondering why my voice sounds a little bit tinnier, or it is because I am in my hotel room in Buffalo and Brett and Mark are in the studio. But going back to Brett. So Brett, obviously, Mark has a little bit of a background with stuff like this. He kind of comes from that audio video world.
Yeah.
What he did with a career and stuff. But knowing you and kind of knowing how you operate, this seems like it might be a step a little bit outside of your comfort zone. Is that right?
In a way, I'm not used to getting personal, right? So my background is 2013 decided to get into banking, and I really enjoyed it. And my managers were saying, man, you'd be a great trainer. And so I got into that, and I do a lot of corporate training for a local bank here. And so I have a lot of experience with people and learning how to deal with people and how to help them learn and stuff like that. But that's mostly just presentation, right? It's not getting in on a personal level and thinking of interview questions and all that. So I've had to learn a lot about that. Absolutely. It is definitely out of my comfort zone. And, but, that's coming along because Mark has that background. He's taught me a lot. And so the more we do this, the more I'm getting a handle on it.
Right. For me, I've never met a microphone I didn't like. I can just go forever. Yeah. I love to hear myself talk.
Yeah. And I'm a major thinker. So I'm usually analyzing and thinking through the whole thing. And
yeah.
So
I'm doing the opposite. I don't think I just speak.
Right. So,
yeah. Well, I think that's kind of what makes the kind of dichotomy of your relationship work, right?
Yeah, you gotta have two different guys.
It's the classic
Mutt and Jeff, Abbott and Costello.
Yeah, I was going to say Abbott and Costello. I was trying to think of something.
Dean Crosby, Bob
modern.
Hope,
and now we got Peter, Paul, and Matthew.
Oh yeah, that's right.
There we go. So I guess why don't we talk a little bit, Brett? You alluded to it. You and when you were talking before, you and Mark obviously have had a relationship leading up to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about that relationship, both of you, and kind of how it's developed or even changed over the course of the podcast. Has anything changed? And why did you guys pick each other to kind of go down this journey with?
My side of it is I didn't really know Brett that well. I had been in meetings with him, and I always liked his shares. And
did you know Brett when he first came in? Do you remember Brett's first meeting?
I don't.
No.
Okay.
I don't. But Brett's stepson and my son played on the same, or they were trying out for the same travel baseball team. Mm-hmm. And Brett came out to me and said, "Hey, does your son play travel baseball? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, I thought I saw his name on a roster for tryouts at this certain travel team. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, my stepson's trying out for that team. I'm like, okay. And so that day that Brett just referred to is the day we really got to know each other well. And we had spoken before, of course, many times, but that day we spent a couple hours and we both had a very warped sense of humor.
Oh, God.
And it's like we weren't even watching the game and we kept going.
We got in trouble.
And people were kind of giving us the stink eye because we were laughing our balls off at the stupidest shit we were saying.
Oh, yeah. Like right back to 3rd, 4th, 5th grade.
Yeah, and it was great. And then that was my first introduction into like the real Brett is the sense of humor, I think, is what initially, made us like each other.
Yeah.
For
me, I think it was, this is going to sound snooty, but I really have a hard time sometimes connecting with people. I am a different breed, mostly because, and I do label myself with the ADHD thing, I have a hard time following through on conversations sometimes. Also, I really connect with people that are very intelligent. And so therefore, when I got talking to Mark, we could just so quickly go back and forth and we could talk about just about anything. And there really wasn't anything I could stump the guy on, right? So we can always find something, no matter how obscure, that we'll talk about it. And so that was really freeing for me as far as finding somebody that I could be a real friend with, because most people just stare at me like, what the fuck's wrong with you, right? They really do sometimes, because
I do that all the time.
Yeah. And so now we'll get into how it's changed and how it's grown and stuff. There's been times for sure. I remember one time that I got all bent out of shape because Mark was listening to levels and stuff, and he jabbed at me. I'm like, what the fuck, dude? I didn't know I was doing.
And so what was happening is I was trying to do an edit, and I have the headphones on, and I'm trying to do an edit to get this thing right, and he just keeps talking on the mic as I'm trying to fix something that's already been recorded. So I had to keep going. I went back, then I went back, then I went back. Then I go, would you fucking stop talking? It's exactly how I said it.
So that kind
and then I countered, and then he was like, well, whatever. It was so stupid, right? But, we have those things every once in a great while.
Well, that kind of leads me into my next question of, have there been any disagreements? Were you nervous at all to get into this together? Because obviously, I know Mark is in a band.
Not at all.
I never had a doubt.
Mark's been in bands. I've been in bands. And when you get into something like this, especially the longer it goes, there can be conflicting ideas about how things should go.
My God!
You know something though, we have a distinct advantage, and you talk about bands. When you get into a band under normal circumstances, the egos come with you, and boy, that is a recipe for disaster. Because in any creative endeavor with different personalities, there is going to be disagreements. It's how you handle those disagreements and how personally you take things. We have the advantage of sobriety in the 12 steps.
Exactly.
So we recognize in others and in ourselves when our ego's in our way, when we need to check our shit. We also realize that people, we rub people the wrong way sometimes, right?
Yep.
I know I do. And you have to let them kind of figure out that you're just kind of a dick sometimes and that you're a good guy.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think I attract the dicks. Now, see, that sounds awful.
Usually only at the bus station. Usually only at the bus station's men's room.
Yeah, but, I too, I'm a performer. I have for years sung in barbershop quartets and a cappella groups and stuff. And, man, you want to talk about, it's the same thing as what you guys go through. But this particular case, no, I didn't have any problem with it. Not at all. Because I know we'll be able to work things out because of what Mark just said.
You kind of mentioned a little bit about, I believe you used the word attract the dicks. I don't know if I would use that phrase myself, but I know for me personally, I've had a lot of people come up to me and be more than complimentary about the podcast. But there are those people, specifically in the rooms of AA, that I don't want to say have less than nice things to say about it, but they just don't get it. They're a little bit against it. They don't understand it. It's just not for them.
And I think that just comes from what you just said. They don't understand, right?
Yeah, and I'm 100% okay with that. I expect that, actually.
Yeah,
you know,
of course,
and that's okay. Then my thing is, well, then don't listen.
Yeah,
it's not for everybody.
If we right, it's not just like me. I'm not for everybody.
Exactly.
And either if we ask you to be on it and you don't want to, just say no. You can just say no. That's fine.
Yeah,
I got no problem with that. I'm not going to be mad. I'm not going to hold it against you. Think less of you. It's just not for everybody. There are certain people you ask that are like, hell yeah, I want to do it.
Yeah, and some of them I wouldn't have expected.
Yeah, and they're usually great guests.
Yeah.
And I've suggested to some people they listen to it, and I see them a couple weeks later. I go, "Oh, did you listen to the podcast?" They're like, "No."
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. I won't ask them again because if they wanted to, they would have.
That's right.
I was just trying to turn them on to it, but some people just have never listened to a podcast in their life and they don't even know what it is.
Yeah. Well, especially we've got some old timers that have come through.
Yeah, and you know something? I just started listening to podcasts like in the last 2 years, so it's not like I'm fucking Joe Podcast,
Right.
I do like them now that I've started listening to them. There's a million of them out there. I would say 80% of them are garbage, but the 20% that are good are real good, especially when you're driving.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I think, a lot of the dissension in the rooms anyways comes from a misunderstanding of the traditions of AA. A lot of people get hung up on the anonymity piece. And so, I've had to combat that a little bit. But the other part of it is we are not associated with AA. And we do want to get the message out, and that's part of what we're supposed to be doing in AA. And if we're all anonymous and we don't speak of anything, how's anybody going to know anything?
Right. And as far as go ahead,
I think I think not to let people behind the curtain too much, but we have changed names in certain cases. We've always honored people's anonymity in whatever way they wanted that.
Right. You don't have to use your own name. We don't like to use location names. Right. It's you can talk in generalities and get the points across. And as far as, I did have somebody say to me as well, what about anonymity? I'm like, what about it?
So I say, what about an open meeting?
What about Well, I'm just saying, hey, you know what? Then you should do what I did and go on Spotify and look up sobriety or recovery, and you'll see there are literally hundreds of podcasts that do what we're doing. We're just trying to do it better and more entertaining and easier to listen to so that people will, refer us to people who might want to find out more about it.
Yeah.
And also listen to it themselves and maybe even beyond the show, just to share our experience, strength, and hope. That's what it's really about.
Yeah. And listen, the benefits have far outweighed those few, right? The stories that we've heard out of this
let's get into
starting to hear even more.
Yeah, let's get into some of those. Yeah. Some of that feedback that you've heard.
So I think one of the first ones, and here I am talking, but I think one of the first ones that hit me was we had a young man on here, and we had a parent reach out and say, man, I just had no idea what my son was going through, right? And that was really good to hear because, a lot of people don't understand what we go through or don't understand our situation, and they can't even wrap their heads around addiction at all. And so, hearing a son talk about these things is, with us, is easier than talking about it with your son, if that makes sense.
Was it me?
So, nope.
Oh, okay.
No, yours came a lot later, and yours was amazing. But
the only reason I asked is because obviously, if you haven't listened yet, go back and listen to Greg Y. My father was on the podcast, and I know for me, that was probably the coolest moment of the entire run. It was a tough listen, as you can imagine, for me.
Sure.
And for the listener, if you want to get the full story, listen to episode 1, and was Matt.
Yep.
He was our first guest. And episode, I believe it
50.
was 50, was his dad, who we had on just to give us a perspective of a parent who knew nothing about addiction, but had a son that, it turns your life upside down. And we know this. And But a lot of people that are in AA, I don't think hear a lot about what it's doing to other people that have no idea what it is. And his dad said, you can ask me if I know what addiction is like, and I got to tell you, I don't.
Yeah, I think the closest thing he said was Cadbury eggs.
Yeah. The compulsion to eat more.
Yeah. But that's it.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a very moving episode.
And I think that speaks to the podcast a little bit of, it's not just for people in recovery, right? Hopefully,
and we are aiming for that.
Right.
Hopefully,
another
like
guest
my
we had
dad can listen and get a better idea of where someone like me is coming from. But at the same time, I can listen to his episode, and it's easy for me to be like, "Oh, I'm better now," and kind of forget some of the stuff.
And an understanding of what you went through as far as the program of Alcoholics Anonymous goes. Those 12 steps. He was interested in that,
and you know what? I know of quite a few people who are not A, addicted, B, don't have a family member or loved one who is in recovery or anything, but just like to listen to the human drama of the episodes and how moving it is to see them or hear their story and how they got set free through the program. And I know, my wife is, she's obviously married to a recovered alcoholic. She's never known me when I drank, but that human drama of how bad things can get. And what people go through in addiction, how just fucking terrible it is. Mm-hmm. That's a real draw. I mean, that kind of drama, and then to have it come out the other side,
redemption story.
Yeah, it is, and people just like to hear that. It's uplifting, even if you're not an addict or,
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a good old. It's the perfect movie plot. All these things, you've got your struggles, you've got your turning point. It's just But it's just really, I can't even tell you. We just had a guy recently on our Facebook page that reached out and said, you guys are really awesome. Just real generalities. And then another couple days would go by, keep up the good work. And then another couple days went by, and all of a sudden we found out he went to his first meeting locally and went to a dinner there and picked up his 24-hour chip, and those are those things that we're aiming for. Those are the things that give us the little tickle. If
right.
You know what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, Brett and I do this because, A, it's fun to do. It just is fun. And we get to meet a lot of people, and it's interesting to us, and we have fun doing it. But, if we can help one person, that's huge. And I know we have already. Mm-hmm. And the potential we have to reach more people and just give that little nudge, not necessarily to go to a meeting, but that would be great.
Yeah.
But even if somebody is just kind of floundering a little bit and they hear something in one of the podcast stories that they can relate to, it might just give them that extra little
just
bit.
Like we did in the rooms. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, it's a great add-on, when you're not at a meeting. If a lot of people drive a lot for a meeting. I know you do, Matt.
Yep.
You're on the road. I'm on the road sometimes.
Yeah, we just had a lady say that she drives to Akron all the time, and that's what she does to pass the time because she can't go to a meeting when she's driving to Akron and stuff.
So she gets a little podcast, and that's why we wanted to make the Glum Lot podcast a little bit humorous. Yeah, and we like to shoot the shit.
Well, some of the shit we do is actually hilarious.
Yeah, we're hilarious.
Oh,
that's what we
hilarious.
So we want it to be entertaining because we don't want it to all just be super heavy because we are not a Glum Lot.
And it can get heavy.
Most people in AA have a pretty good sense of humor.
Well, I think it's a good representation of what it's like in a meeting, right? One of the things that makes, for me at least, coming into AA, you come in there and you are on the verge of tears, and all of a sudden you have a group of people laughing about them going through the same situation because
laughing about the things that the general public would consider appalling, right, or the lowest of the low. With us, we can sit and laugh at each other about going through the window and running around naked and flipping off cops
because we see,
and a lot of it's because we've done it.
Yeah, it's insane.
We see the insanity.
So it's fun to, yeah,
right. It's a shared experience that insanity is, and just like I try to always put forth that we're together because of a common problem, but we stay together because of a common solution. Mm-hmm. So we want people to hear that solution, and we don't
And we believe in it.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's not a deep dive into the
Nope.
steps and the program, the 12-step program. I mean, it's always mentioned and talked about because that's what it is. That's recovery. But our show is not about analyze. Our show is not the 12 and 12. We're not going to, you know what I mean? Our show is about the human aspect of the experience of addiction and the experience of recovery, and sharing that with other people so that they can relate and know they're not alone. And we say this at the start of the show. I think one of Brett's lines is, know they're not alone.
Yeah.
And that there is hope, and anyone can recover.
Anyone,
whether they do or not.
We are proof.
What's that?
Anyone from jail to Yale.
Whether they do or not is kind of up to the grace of God and the amount of work they're really willing to put in.
Yeah.
And, every one of us has a different bottom. Some look worse than others.
Mine looks like a pear.
Mine looks like, I was told when I came in 34 and a half years ago that I was a high bottom drunk. And I thought they were talking about like the tightness and curve of my backside, but they weren't. They were talking about the fact that I'd never wrecked a car, got arrested, been to jail.
Insane.
All that shit.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, I was in the darkest place I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was far enough for me.
Oh, definitely.
So there's a lot of what ifs, but we all get there, in different ways. And you hear that on the show. I mean, some of the stories are, they're fucking tough.
Well, let's, so not to put you guys on the spot, but what have been some of your favorite or most memorable stories or guests or moments on the podcast?
I mean, they're all unique in their each way, Matt, but there are some, I am without a doubt a big time empath, meaning I have a huge heart. And so, some of these stories, because I am also kind of a high bottom drunk, when I hear people just basically rising from the ashes, Mark knows it, because if I hear something that's really good, I'm on texting with him afterwards. I'm so grateful. I can't believe that I'm actually able to do this. Thank you for doing this with me, right? All those things. And that happens regularly because of these stories.
Yeah, I mean, we heard a story from, if you go back, Peter. He was in the process of committing suicide.
Yep.
When something came to him through the grace of his higher power that made him have that turning point. And, when we talk in the podcast, we usually start from when they first started drinking. And you can see what they demonstrate for us is the progression of the disease and the insanity. And then what we're looking for in their story is this turning point. The turning point where they are desperate and they know they need help and they know they can't do it on their own. And for a lot of stories, there's more than one of them.
Yeah.
It's like a start and a stop and a start and a stop. But they're usually pretty poignant, those moments. And then there's also a moment when they start to feel the freedom of sobriety. And it's like, it's a different life, and we talk about this design for living we didn't know we could have. And, people's stories are just, it's the human experience. It's very moving. It's the emotional part of recovery. And, that when you go in a room, when you go into rooms or you go to a speaker meeting, a lot of stuff that people say, you feel it.
Oh,
you really feel it.
I'll feel it for
and
days.
that's kind of the magic of alcoholic to alcoholic is
especially the things that happen to people that they didn't necessarily cause. And a lot of us alcoholics are very emotional people. And sometimes when something happens like that, it's traumatic for us. And you get to hear those things, but then you get to see, like Mark said, that turning point and then that freedom that they have now and how they can use that trauma to help other people, because inevitably we're all going to go through it at some point.
And so you were talking about some specific things. There was one of the early episodes was Mark D. And he talks about driving off a bridge, flipping his car, almost killing himself, and what happens after, and the people he runs into that were there that night that years later he finds out. Like one of them was the cop that responded. One of them was the person that was behind him that did the 911 call.
And was in a meeting.
Yeah, and it all relates back to sobriety. And another thing is that we did that I thought was really kind of cool is we had on somebody from Al-Anon. First, we had on Dave S., who's in the program with us. Just picked up a 6-year chip, in fact. And then we had on his wife, who had a lot to do with his sobriety. And, she was an Al-Anon, and she really exhibited that tough love and the boundaries. But that helped him get sober,
Absolutely.
And to hear it from that side to me is, that was a good episode. I thought
that was a great
100%.
episode.
Yeah.
100%. I think we're going to explore that.
Yeah, we want to do that more. We want to mix it up. And so, I guess sometimes I always examine things and saying, are we spending too much time on a drunk-a-log?
Yeah.
But everybody's story is so unique.
Yeah, and I definitely get caught up in that because, in my short, just almost 3 years now, I have really done a lot of studying and a lot of I love it, right? Because it changed my life. So I get caught up in that sometimes with, are we spending enough time on the recovery piece? But at the same time, if we talk too much about recovery, well, then that's not going to be very attractive to the person that's going through the shit, right? They got to hear the shit so they can be able to relate and recognize the things that they're going through.
I know at my first meeting, what made me want to come back to a second meeting, what attracted me was when people talked about how, their tough spot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It wasn't that somebody goes, I did step 4.
I did 90 meetings in 90 days, and I went to 6 today. Early on, that did nothing. Nothing.
Well,
it was just scared me.
If you just hear the recovery part of it, it's hard to put that person in the light. There's an assumption that they were never that bad to begin with, right?
Plus, you can't relate to something you've never experienced.
That's
yes.
Right.
So when I went to my first meeting, there was a guy who, and I told this in my story, there was a guy who said, I was helping another alcoholic, a new guy, and he needed a ride to a meeting, and I was giving him the ride, and I stopped at a gas station to run in and buy a bottle of soda because I don't drink coffee.
Yeah.
And I ran in to get the soda, came out, and the guy stole my car. And everybody in the room started laughing. And this is my first meeting, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so the next guy that spoke, he said, my name is so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic, and I'm the guy that stole this car.
Yeah.
And everybody just roared.
Oh, yeah.
And I started thinking, these are my kind of people.
That's right.
But it was the shared experience of the hell of drinking, the hell of not drinking, some of the escapades, the insanity, it made me feel like this is where I belong. I've never heard anybody else talk about this. I've experienced it. Obviously, they experienced. Mm-hmm. I want to stop drinking. They have stopped drinking. So these are the people that had what I had, but they also had what I don't have yet, but they can tell me how to get there.
Exactly.
And so in the podcast, I think it's important to spend time talking about the experience of addiction and then talk about, it's like they say, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. So we like to hear the experience of addiction and then what happened.
And the strength. Yeah. And then the strength.
And then we spend a little time on what
piece.
it's like now, but, people can tell you their life is better. Of course, it's got to be better because if it wasn't, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah. And so for me, I had to examine what our real aim was. Are we trying to just talk about recovery and all that stuff, or are we really trying to help somebody that's coming in, as far as what our real audience is
and with helping
what we're trying
people,
to accomplish.
Have you been, I know it's a testament to the guests we've had on, but one of the things that surprised me listening to every episode is the amount of vulnerability that people are willing to have when they come on here. I mean, you guys have both had your own episodes, but and so you've experienced it, but it is a very vulnerable seat to sit in.
Well, yeah.
With two guys sitting across from you asking you to bear your life story. Has that surprised you guys? How willing people have been to come on and share? Is there anything else that has surprised you?
It hasn't for me.
No, it hasn't for me either. And I think the reason is because we've spent time in the rooms, and we've spent time one-on-one talking to people. And once you're in AA for a while, that becomes the norm. When you first come in, it seems very abnormal, and you're looking for a reason why people are doing this. Like, what do they want? What do they want from me that they're doing this? And, they only want you to do well, And so we get people in that have had years in, and they're very comfortable talking about. We like to get newer people in.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
I think that would be the only time that would happen. But again, we're always trying to put people at ease. Listen.
Yeah, and for anybody that hears this episode and thinks that, I couldn't go in there, man. We make it really easy. It's very relaxed. You don't talk about anything you don't want to talk about. You can change your name if you want.
Yeah.
Hopefully after this, you don't even have to live in the area.
Right, exactly. Most of the
guests
we've had, have been here. We did have, if you go back to Patrick H., 2 episodes, the stand-up comedian from Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
The story with him is he contacted the show. Somehow he'd heard about the show, and he said, I'm a comedian, stand-up comedian from New York, and most of my humor is about sobriety, and I've been sober X amount of years, and I'd like to be on the show. And of course, we said that'd be amazing, and we were going to do it remotely. And he said, where are you located? And we told him. He said, well, I'm going to be up there in a month doing a couple shows.
Yeah, there's a God moment.
So I said, would you want to come into the studio? And he goes, hell yeah. So he came in and he did 2 episodes with us, and it was great. And he's a super nice guy, still in touch with him.
You mentioned a little bit about wanting to have some more young people on. We've had a decent amount of young people on. And speaking of other things that have surprised me, the stories and the message that we've had people that have never had a legal drink on that have had amazing stories and messages.
Yeah.
And I think, to me, that's just, a testament to the program, and that you're never too young to get this thing, right?
Yeah. That doesn't.
No, and the other thing too is, I would say, is that you're never too unique to get this.
Yes.
Because the mechanisms of addiction in those that have them are very common.
Mm-hmm.
We have a very common experience. The circumstances surrounding our insanity and all those things is different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But there is
some of those patterns.
There's very common things. And so if somebody says, I hit a family with my car and I spent, 15 years in Attica and blah, 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 blah. There are parts of his story that I can relate to.
Absolutely.
Even having never come close to going to jail.
Yeah.
I still hear the mechanisms of addiction and how difficult they are to overcome, and how this person that went to these extreme, his insanity was extreme. He overcame these mechanisms the exact same way I did. The 12 steps, sponsorship, meetings, literature, one-on-ones with other alcoholics. We all have these, we all share in this common solution.
Yeah.
So, we haven't had anybody on yet from a foreign country.
Getting there.
But my feeling is we're going to be shocked at how exactly common it is.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
We're alcoholics.
So who would your dream guest be?
I still want to have on, and this is just my, goofy ego shit, but I'd love to have a celebrity on.
Which one? Pick one.
I would love to have on Rob Lowe.
Okay. All right.
I've always liked Rob Lowe. I know he's sober, and I know he had a difficult time. I think he would be a fantastic guest.
I was just watching Rob Lowe talk about his partying days with the Lakers, and how Pat Riley told him he couldn't hang out with the Lakers anymore because he was giving him Quaaludes the night before games.
I'm sure his story is sick.
So I would want him on just to hear that story alone. But yeah,
right, so if you can book him, Matt, I'd love it.
I have a request as well.
Yes, what?
I would like Theo Vaughn.
Okay, yeah, the comedian.
That dude he's got a huge heart, and he's not afraid to cry. And I have watched some episodes. He's a comedian, right? First. Yeah. But his podcast is also very popular. But what's really springboarded him is his being vocal about him using the program, the 12 steps of AA and other affiliated bodies. But I have seen so many YouTube videos of people that call in and just opening up to him and saying, "My God, you have changed my life." Or you've made me want to get better and do this. And that's kind of what we're going for. But Theo he's a different breed for sure, just like Mark and I are, but he has a heart the size of the world, man. And
he's an odd cat for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. But if you look up some of those things where he is taking calls and he just drops everything to talk about it, and very candidly too, which is really neat. So,
What about you, Matt?
So I mean,
himself.
my first speaker tape ever that I ever listened to. This was years ago when the first time I got sober. You know who it was? It was Stevie Ray Vaughan. Was the very first speaker tape I ever listened to.
Amazing, yeah. And I know that he used to have meetings with his band. They'd have a meeting before the show.
And so that was always just super cool to me, to see somebody in that situation. I mean, imagine being in that era and doing his job and having to do it and do it sober. And he did it by relying on AA. And so, one of the things that got me back into it was if Stevie Ray Vaughan's not too cool for it, then I'm not too cool for it.
Yep.
There you go.
You know, also be a great guest is Bill Wilson.
Oh yeah,
if we could get him back.
Well, I do a Bill Wilson imitation. I mean, we could have me do it and just speak as him.
Let's
the
hear
ghost of Bill Wilson. I'm going to channel it. I only do it for you, Matt. I do it for you. Any sponsee I have that's it's been skipping out on meetings. I haven't seen him in a meeting in a couple days. I will call them, and if you don't answer the phone, I'll do my Bill Wilson imitation. I leave them a voicemail of Bill Wilson. I haven't seen you at a meeting lately, and I think it's important that you attend these. Dr. Bob and I have been talking about you, and
I might have
we
a
just really
voicemail
want you to
saved.
come back.
I might have one saved that we could plug it in here.
No, you can erase it. my ghost of Bill Wilson.
That's right.
I mean, current.
At first, he started a little British.
I did.
Yeah, that's okay.
Current dream guest. I mean, I saw Dax Shepard on the Theo Von podcast talking about his recovery.
Yeah.
That was really good. I think Will Arnett is sober, right? From
Who?
Smartless.
Yes, I believe. I think Jason Bateman might be too. I don't really know.
I think so.
I think there's a ton of them.
You know what? I think everybody that's in acting or music is probably either using too much or they're sober. I'll tell you something. I saw something that was really funny. I can't remember what show this was, and it was a long time ago. But these two guys, they were in LA, and they were both involved in the movie business. And they were doing something together. And the guy looked at his watch. He goes, I got to go to my AA meeting. The guy goes, I didn't know you were in recovery. And he said, I'm not, but all the deals are made at AA meetings nowadays, so I have to go to the meeting.
Oh, jeez.
But, there's...
Who's the guy that was in Silence of the Lambs?
The British guy, Anthony Hopkins?
Anthony Hopkins has a great speaker tape.
Really? No shit.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's very vivid, too. It's awesome.
Yes, Clarice.
Yeah,
well, you know
Clarice.
what?
I would eat his liver with fava beans and a fine Chianti, but it's cirrhotic.
I mean, it's kind of a natural. I could see why somebody that's an actor would love doing a speaker.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's basically an hour-long monologue, right?
Yep. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to ask you guys to get a little introspective here. What have you learned about yourselves throughout the past 56 episodes, if anything?
Well, for me, I mean, I've been on the mic and on camera and everything as part of my business that I ran for 30 whatever years. So this part of it to me is just a natural, fun thing, and I've always known that. But I did a lot of stuff that didn't have a lot of meaning to me.
Mm-hmm.
And this has a lot of meaning to me. Mm. And I think the coolest things that happen out of this is you make new friends. And so there's been people that have come in that I didn't know at all. One of them was Allison.
Yes.
You got Allison M. You want to go back and look in the episode. She's on there. I'd never met her. But she came in here and she was really cool. And now I see her and I'm friends with her, you know. There's other guys that I've seen around. There was Bobby T, who I didn't really know that well. Mm-hmm. He did a double episode. His story was very intriguing.
Great episode.
And now I feel like I know these people so much more. So much better.
Yeah, because we get snippets in the room.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And what's interesting, too, is I go to a meeting, I look around the room and I count how many people have been on.
Yeah.
And it's usually at least 10 in the rooms around here.
Yes.
But, to me, the best stories are still out there. And I don't think any of them are boring. I haven't heard one yet that's like boring.
Well, and I would like to think that we go to the best meetings, but I know that there are more people out there with just as good, if not better, stories. And hopefully we can reach those people and like you said, get people from all over the place.
I'll tell you, if there's anything I wish would happen is that people would email us at the Glum Lot Podcast at gmail.com and say, I'd be willing to come on. I would love that.
Well, that's why I started the nominating thing. Hopefully,
please don't feel that it's egotistical to do that, because we want people to share their stories.
Yeah. That's why we do it in the room.
Right. Or suggest people, hey, I heard a guy that's got a great story. I asked him if he would be willing to go on the podcast. He said yes. Here's his contact.
Yep.
Because we're always looking for things like that.
And I know people like Cindy has been looking out for us. She's been sending a lot of people our way.
Oh my gosh.
A lot of past guests have been recommending some really good people.
And even non-guests lately.
Well, you know how, like, if you see or you listen to a popular podcast, they always say, so-and-so is a friend of the show.
Yep.
These people are friends of the show.
Exactly.
And they're really the ones that, we're just three guys. We only know a very limited, our bubble is limited. But the more contacts we create that are friends of the show, all these other bubbles start going out, and they create bubbles, and the network.
And as far as them not worrying about being egotistical, I mean, look at us. We're doing a podcast about our podcast. So how's that egotistical?
I know.
So I want to get back to you said being introspective. One thing that I've learned about myself is how much I used to push people away because I was afraid of them getting to know me. And by doing this, I have had to, I have realized how much I love people when I thought I hated everybody. That's a big thing for me, is how much I love people. And I love hearing about how all of us are just humans and we're all living that human experience, and none of us really has a bad side to us if you just seek to understand the situation.
Yeah, and a lot of it's perspective. I mean, I can find something annoying in everyone I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
But that's kind of that's on me.
Yeah. But a lot of these people, I mean, my God, I would have run from a lot of people. Right. Most.
But by the same token, especially through the podcast, I can find so many redeeming things about a person that I never knew.
Yep. And it far outweighs any prejudice I had before. And, now, like I said, that's the biggest thing for me, is I have been so humbled with, my expectations, all those things, because what I've experienced from talking to these folks is just nothing but love. That's it. So.
Right on. And for me, I think the thing that I've learned the most is that I say the word way too much.
Me too.
And that for somebody who talks so much, I really don't enjoy the sound of my own voice.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you gotta really try to take a step back and just listen to the tones roll out of your mouth.
Yeah, I can get caught up on that too.
It's tough. It's tough not being overly critical, right, of yourself.
It is
in this situation.
It is. But if you look at it as I'm only critical in the fact that I want to improve, then there's nothing wrong with it.
Well, then if we're helping others, how do you be critical of yourself?
Matt, come on. Come on, Matt.
So the more you practice that, the less you're
get
thinking.
A little self-confidence.
Has there been anything unexpected that has come throughout this journey of doing the podcast?
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing that happened off mic that blew me away. We had a guest on, Paige, young girl, and she did a great episode. Real cool story. A lot had to do with college and Adderall and all these things I really don't know anything about. So I was educated. And then after the mics turned off, I wanted to put her last initial, because we say like Paige W or whatever. And I said, what's your last name? And she told me, and it was an uncommon last name. And I said, I used to know a guy with that last name. His name was Tim. And she goes, that's my father. And she had just talked about her father dying of cancer.
Yeah.
And so I had known this kid since kindergarten, and I grew up with him all through school. And and she didn't know a lot about him. And I started saying his nicknames, the people he hung out with, where he lived. And she got choked up. It was really cool.
I spoke to her after,
choked up.
Yeah, it was
It's like she had a new window to her dad.
Yeah, it was a really small world, you know. Another thing too for me was when we had your dad on.
That was mine.
He looked at me around the end of the podcast and he was like, you know, I just really want to thank you for, you know, saving my son's life or something. It's something that was not true. But people don't know, you know, they just know that I sponsor you.
Well, it's partly
and
true,
you're
Mark.
doing well. So they're like, oh, this guy did it. And I really didn't do anything. I did what you did the work. I just said, I wouldn't do that. You should probably do this.
Yeah, we'll call BS on that because you had to show him the way.
Yeah.
And so you're partly there. And I think he's right for saying thank you for that. You did do something.
I think he's right, but I think that you are part of a larger collective.
Absolutely.
That's right.
I think you are a large piece, but still a piece in this massive machine that helped.
Right, and I'd like to think,
but many other people's lives.
I'd like to think if I didn't do it, another alcoholic would have done it.
True,
you know what I mean?
There. Thank God.
Brett's also a big part, a big piece.
But just the fact that he got emotional to me was just like I was moved.
I think the other thing that shocked me a little bit was on Joe B's episode.
Yeah.
When he disappeared, I think it was, and you were really hurt by that.
I wasn't even a sponsor. I was just his very good friend.
Yeah.
And I knew he was starting to spiral, and he called me from a bar, and he had just taken his first drink in 10 years or something like that.
But when you told him how much that bothered you,
it really affected me.
And it floored him.
Yeah, I don't think he ever knew that.
He didn't.
How affected I was by that.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know, alcoholism hurt me that day.
Yeah.
Not because I drank.
No, we had somebody close to us.
Because my good friend drank.
That's right.
You know, and I was like, fuck. All I kept telling him is like, I'm like, you don't have to do this. I'll come and pick you up right now. If you need to go to rehab, I'll take you there. If you want to go to a meeting, I'll go to a meeting with you. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. You know what, though? He did. He did have to do it, you know.
And I hope I've got somebody in that same situation that brought me in these rooms and made sure I got my ass in these rooms, and he's all but disappeared now. And I hope for that same experience someday that Mark just had.
Do you think there's something poetic in that this is the feeling we have been giving the people around us our entire lives? And then once you get into the rooms, you get to taste a bit of that and the connections that you make, because not all of us make it, right?
Oh, well, no, most of us don't. I mean, most of the people that come into the rooms don't make it.
No.
We're a minority.
Even with a full-hearted try.
You know, and I think I've talked about the fact that I'm the Grim Reaper. Yes. I've had 5 sponsees die, and it's fucking tragic. And that is addiction and alcoholism. It's fucking tragic, you know?
But thank God you keep going.
Right, and it makes it all the more real to me all the time. You know, once the compulsion to drink left me, there's a lot of people that have that experience and they walk away from AA and they don't come back. Mm-hmm. They may never drink again. You know, I don't know. They may be fine. I don't know.
Yeah.
For me, I got away from meetings and I had to come back. I didn't drink, but the old ways of thinking, you know, returned, and the old feelings returned. And
man, I'll tell you, I don't know why I kept coming back. Thank God I did, because I would not have made it either.
Yeah, there's an attraction there.
Yeah, my depression and yeah.
But, you know, thank God, I always say this too, is thank God I was born in a period of human history where this was available. Because if I was born, you know, before Bill and Bob started this, I'd be dead by now.
Oh, hell yeah.
For sure. I mean, my father died at 56 from cirrhosis. Consumption, wow. That's what it would have been called back in those days.
Mm-hmm. Consumption.
And yeah, that's what they called it.
Yeah.
And I drank more than he did.
Yeah.
So with my genetics for liver and the way I drank, if I didn't kill myself in a car accident or kill somebody else, I'd be dead of liver disease. I know. I mean, at 64, there's no fucking way I would have lasted.
No.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've got to just be very thankful that I was born at a time when this was available.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, we are starting to come to our time here a little bit. So I will kind of wrap things up, but I just have 2 more questions for you. First one's from Mark. Why am I your favorite sponsee?
Because I'll tell you exactly why. Because you're fucking honest. You are
Yes.
so. I've never met a sponsor who was
I
so
agree.
honest.
I agree.
Even when
from the get-go.
even when he knows, you're going to be like, "What the fuck?"
And man, people hated that at first in the rooms. A lot of them did.
Yeah.
And now they love you
Matt's
for it.
key is he is an honest guy.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
unbelievable.
why.
Well, I was just kidding, but now I'm flattered. Thank you.
Well, I always tell you that.
That's a huge
You
thing. And
you
actually,
got to be honest, open, and willing, and man, you are, and that to me has been your great success.
Yeah,
Well-
that's why every 5 minutes I'm trying to tell you I'm proud of you because it just blows me away on the regular. You know, you're a year, dude. You're still. I mean, you're more honest than I am after 3.
14 months,
So-
but I mean, who's counting?
We need to work on that shit. But
Well, listen, guys, I do want to tell you thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. And not just today, but, you know, I
wanted a question.
Oh yeah, you said you had another question.
Yeah, you
Oh,
said you
well,
had
I
one
was
from Mark,
gonna-
and I feel left out. What the fuck?
if you'd let me do my little diatribe here, then
Oh,
Yeah, you
I
were
was-
wrapping up already.
have
I
at
was
it.
going to
have
get
at
to
it.
one.
Go.
I was going to get to one. You know, but like I was saying, thank you so much for, you know what? Fuck you guys. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to say it now.
Oh, stop it.
What do you I do. No, I really enjoy being a part of this and a part of this experience, and it does make me feel good to have just to be a small piece in the Glum Lot podcast. So thank you for letting me be a part of it. And Brett, to finish things off, I guess, what are we seeing for the future of the podcast? Well, anything?
Oh, man. You know, I was just talking, you got me on that now. I was just talking to Mark about that the other night. I had a big moment with a lady that reached out to me that I've known 30 years, but I haven't talked to her in about 28. And she reached out to me about her son. And, you know, that night I was just overcome with gratitude and everything. And I reached out to Mark and we got talking a little bit, and I was like, I think there's more to this yet to come, even, you know, based on even what's happening recently. For example, I reached out to somebody just yesterday that is not really interested in being on the podcast, but said, man, I know so many people with so many great stories, and I want to bring them to you. And just like that, we got 6 new guests, all from different varying backgrounds, different areas. And then another one just came out, and this is going to be a real beauty. I don't want to give too much away, but we got another author probably coming on, and
Good tea.
he's done
This
some
is radio,
time.
baby.
Yeah, so done some time, so stay tuned for that. But I think there's a lot more to come, even as I'm trying to say how to even put this.
I'm sure Mark has a way to put it.
Yeah, he probably does.
It's just that, you know, as our sphere of
Influence.
contact and influence grows, hopefully outside of the U.S. and grows, you know, all over the world, we can help more people. We can do more stories. We can spread our wings more. People have ideas, send them in. We're experimenting too. This is a growing thing.
Yeah.
And we want to grow it. We'll do everything we can to make it a very positive experience for anyone that's involved in it.
Yeah.
So,
well, guys, I
we're
know
gonna
this was just a trial, but I really kind of hope this audio and everything sounds good, because I think this was a really nice conversation that we just had. But
we're not going to use it in the show, though.
Yeah,
we'll never put this on.
Cut it.
So until next time on the Glum Lot Podcast, I'm Mark.
I'm Bart.
And I'm Matt.
As we wrap up another episode of the Glum Lot Podcast, we want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you who tuned in today. Navigating the path to recovery from alcohol and other substances is a journey filled with challenges, triumphs, and self-discovery. Remember, we're not affiliated with Alcoholics Anonymous, but we're here to provide a safe space for open conversations about the complexities of recovery. Your stories, courage, and resilience inspire us and our listeners alike. If you or someone you know is on the transformative journey, know that you're not alone. Join us next time as we continue to explore the diverse facets of recovery. Until then, stay strong, stay connected, and remember that each day is a step towards a brighter, sober tomorrow. Thank you for being part of the Glum Lot community.